I am a horrible person. So I am public enemy number one amongst my former best friend's family and friends. I ruined her wedding. This is my confession and why I did what I did. Bear with me for highlighting the backstory. I don't want the post to be so long and I really want to get to the good stuff as fast as possible. Backstory. BFF, 30, met an older guy, 43, in a bar. He came home with her, moved in within a few days. My SO and I met him 1 month later. He proposed that night. I tore the $599 Blue Nile price tag off the ring and he about lost his mind. I told him that was trashy to present her a ring with the tag on it. He later told her it was a $12,000 ring. She asked me to ask him to sign a prenup, which I did, and he said he would. Later he would refuse. She inherited some money, bought a house/land, and has a decent job. BFF's fiancé proceeds to tell my SO and I that he was a millionaire but lost it in the divorce. He did meth with his ex to try and bring her back from her addiction and that his exes abused him. That he was a former military contractor overseas but couldn't talk about it due to the MIB. That he was currently designing parks for the Department of Parks and Rec, etc., and proceeds to tell my SO how he should treat me. All within a couple hours of meeting. My BFF was high and drunk that night, he gave her with coke. She hates my SO, because he took me away from her. It's been years, so she picked a fight with him and we left. Granted, all of this happened from meet to wedding in about 9 months. Within a few weeks, he sells his car so he's driving her truck. He picks a fight with various friends and she becomes more isolated. They drink heavily together and she's getting in trouble at work. She and I cannot talk or meet up without him by her side. I paid to run a background check. He keeps changing his last name, takes wife's last names. He has an active aggravated domestic violence restraining order on him granted right before he hooked up with my BFF. Still active. 2 daughters, the oldest doesn't associate with him. Oh, and was married 3 times prior. Red flags everywhere. I tell her. She says that she knows he was married before but she knows everything, and it's not like that, and he had a hard life. Excuses. I tell her people are coming to me because they see bruises on her, have experience with his druggy self, she's isolated, horrible stories are circulating about his/her behavior, later corroborated as true. She denies all and says, he loves me. Time passes. We cannot talk or meet up because he monitors her, goes through her cell phone. On the rare occasions we have contact he's glued to her and is a douchebag. No one has met or even heard if he has any friends. No contact with his life. Fake FB profiles. Later, her mom is in the hospital and I went to visit. Turns out my dad was brought by ambulance to the hospital without my knowledge, so I find out and am running between hospital rooms checking on both. Her mom had a moment. I call her. No answer. I leave messages and texts. We finally meet up elsewhere and she brings the douchebag who laughed at her mom and said some of the most insensitive things I've ever heard. While she's in the restroom, he spills a shot of tequila I refused from him at me and grabs my arms. When my BFF returns, he tries to interrupt anything we say, strokes her like a pet with hands on throat and top of the head, tells me how she's losing weight and getting more beautiful. I'm phrasing it more nicely than he did. It was utterly disgusting and disrespectful. Especially in light of the situation, we are expressing concern over our parents' dire health situations. I hug her and tell her it was rude, he's disrespectful, and he needs to stop talking and get away from us. She says I know, but that's how he is. As we part ways from our hug, I see the bruises on her arms. They are the wrong angle, color, and placement for fun happy kinky bruises. Every time I try to talk to her, she loves him. He loves her. She's got this. But I'm the one who has folks calling me telling me about the fights, the rumors, the mind games, their concerns, but she just won't listen to reason. Her own family doesn't like the guy, but they won't step up to the plate and speak their mind because she does whatever she does. He finds out information and blackmails people into silence. Other women have contacted my BFF and harassed her while playing freaking around with him. Oh, did I mention that Mr. Designs Parks got fired from his job, cutting the grass at the park? Yeah, one lie after another. So he's already living off her money. So fast forward, approximately 2 weeks ago. My BFF, her sis-in-law, my friend, and I meet for a ladies' luncheon. We drink, have food, a good time. I play nice and don't say anything about the groom. We decide to go elsewhere and be social. Oh, can't go to our usual place because the groom may be there with family. Okay, detour. She gets a call. He had some drama. Sis-in-law calls me to pick her up from the house as they are fighting. I do so. 2 weeks before the wedding he got into some sort of argument because he had contact with another woman. My BFF then shows up with him in tow. He was his usual a-hole self and grabbing on me and demanding I like him. Needless to say, this entire day went to hell and I kept my cool even with him being a prick. BFF's mom says he hates me because I am the one person in her life he cannot control and sees through him. So, a couple days before the wedding I make the long drive to her house to prep the food for the wedding. He's all over me, tells me he didn't think I'd show. I told him I wasn't there for him, but for her, and I'm a woman of my word. He keeps touching me, in my face, etc. I still kept my cool and told him repeatedly. Do not touch me. Respect my boundaries and personal space. My BFF told him repeatedly to leave me alone and be good. Who the heck has to even tell a grown man this? So, I butchered a side of beef and my BFF walks up to me as he's walking away from messing with me yet again and I tell her. You just saw me butcher this and you know how good I am with a knife. Keep him away from me. Her eyes got huge and he was behind me. She ushered him out. Sis-in-law showed up. I made them homemade beef stock, stew meat, and steaks for personal use, plus marinades, and we prepped the remaining food, etc. If I was such a D, I wouldn't have. I continued to play nice, gave him advice on his outfit for the wedding because he had the Elton John / Liberace sequined, and satin 70s collar shirt with a Scooby-Doo Freddy non-matching cravat thing happening with a seersucker suit and wicker shoes and it was hideous. Anyways, I say I gotta head back, it's a long drive, but we all decide to go have a drink. Us girls toast to my BFF's health and happiness. He doesn't like that we didn't mention him. He's triggered and is grabbing my arm and in my face demanding me to like him. He brings up that I background checked him. I say yes I did. He claims he's never laid hands on her and that he can have his men in black friends hurt me or change his background to a pedophile. Really? Of all the examples you say that? Gross. BFF runs off crying and her fiancé goes after her. Apparently, another guy saw him and reported it to the bartender. A bartender comes outside and asks if I'm okay. We explain that anywhere this guy goes it's a shit show, but we are okay. BFF comes back, I sit on the outside edge of the table, she's in the middle, her fiancé is in the far side sitting on the seat, and her sis-in-law is sitting on a table facing us. Us girls are talking. Out of nowhere, he grabs me by the back of my head from behind my BFF and yanks me backward. I stand up, exclaim. Did you really? And punch him in the face. BFF freaks and runs off and they leave. Sis-in-law and I stay there in shock. I drink water, I ask the bartender for the security footage but she doesn't have access, so we go back to sis-in-law's house, and just talk till 2 a.m. before I head home. She confirms it was an unprovoked attack by him out of nowhere. The next day, I text my BFF that he is out of control, cannot respect boundaries, refuses to take no for an answer, and she agrees it was a disaster, he was wrong, she'll talk to him, etc. Yeah, I didn't hear back on how that went down. But sis-in-law went to pick up food and fiancé was there and he continued carrying on about how can he make me like him. When she confronted him about attacking me he claimed that I punched him. She told him that was a lie. He then changed it to how I punched him in the back when they weren't looking. And so this is the story he fed to my BFF. And she believes it. Because she doesn't want to own up to what a mistake she's making. So, I don't hear from her. Was supposed to spend the night before the wedding. I get a text to just show up at noon for the wedding setup. I don't respond because I'm stunned that she is still marrying this prick and she cannot even acknowledge what is right in front of her. I decide I'm not going to the wedding. Day of, sis-in-law calls and texts begging me to show up. BFF leaves a brief voicemail to be there. This is where I apparently lose my mind. I have been on an emotional roller coaster for months worrying about her, scared she's going to wind up severely hurt on so many levels. Physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. I did what any insane and fiercely protective woman would do. If my best friend is gonna make the worst choice of her life to date, I gotta stop it. So I called a mutual friend to drive me. I handmade a sign that read, "As your best friend, I object. You deserve better. Done with love, XOXO." And taped it to the back of my shirt and put a jacket over it. At this point, I had a vague idea in my head that I would stand to the side and let her rid it, and if she went ahead, I would have to just go with it. It did not go down that way. I met up with some other concerned friends who warned me this would either snap her out of it or end our friendship, but most likely would end it. But they knew that talking to her hadn't gotten through and agreed that if me going to this extreme and being willing to end my most precious friendship would at least make her maybe think, then nothing would. So I show up and I saw the fear in the groom's eyes. In the side room, I hugged her dad. I hugged her and told her she was the most beautiful bride in the world, that I loved her more than anything and I hoped she knew that. I hugged her mom and told her I loved her and to not forget that. And as I walked into the wedding venue, and saw that douchebag, my mind snapped. I cannot say that I didn't know what I was doing. I took off my jacket and threw it in my purse at my friend. The wedding photographer snapped a pic. I remember that much. All I really remember is it was like an out-of-body experience because I locked eyes with the groom waiting at the altar, and then I strutted up there and double-flipped him off, turned around, and continued double-flipping him off as he read what was on my back. I then said I object, and strolled towards the exit. I do remember locking eyes with some of her family who were smiling and nodding and then being grabbed and pulled/pushed out the door. I vaguely recollect my BFF standing there looking confused and her groom and his friend yelling and pushing me, and I spun around so she could read the sign and saying I love you but I object, and I don't remember much else except getting to the parking lot and falling into my friend's arms to cry and lose what was left of my crap. And then my friends gave me alcohol and with reckless abandon, I announced to anyone that would listen that I ruined my best friend's wedding because she was marrying a narcissistic, controlling, abusive douchebag, and I tried to warn her. I just couldn't stop the train wreck that I was engineering. Chew, insert fiery explosion here. So, yes. I ruined her wedding. I didn't think it through. I acted impulsively. I was a jerk. I didn't consider that I might be causing her hurt and embarrassment. All she and folks, ignorant of the background, see is that I ruined her special day. And I sorta did. No, I did. She got married anyway. I was selfish, despite my surface intentions to save her, because I ignored that she was going to do this anyway. I pushed her further into his arms and under his control. And now, despite some folks cheering me on and sharing stories of how it happened to them and they wish they had listened, it doesn't help that I have irrevocably lost the one person in the universe I have always been there for, have loved, and cared for as my own flesh. And I wake in the morning with tears on my face and a hole in the center of my chest. But the strange thing is, I don't regret it. The objection. I don't. I regret the execution. The pirouette while flipping the bird, definitely not my finest moment. She made a horrible, terrible choice and I pray that she's going to be okay. I hope some good comes out of this and that he really does have to step up, treat her right, and proves me wrong. Because now, all eyes are watching. And I go on with my life being one of the most hated former friends to ever exist. If you were to do something as stupid and reckless as I did, besides owning it, I do, what now? She already texted me stating how dare I, friendship over, etc. And all I could text was, nothing I say matters and I wish you the best in all things. Update. I ran into Dad. I stood still and waited for the worst. Whether a punch to the face or an ass chewing. He looked at me and told me he knew I loved her and asked me why. I said, fourth wife. He was like, what? I said X, Y, Z. He said he knew some, but not all. He called her mom and called her out. Did you know about this, that, and the other? Well, yes. He was furious and ended the call. He told me that he stopped one brother from beating this guy to a pulp because they didn't have enough info. Turns out mom had the info all along and didn't share it. Apparently, I did do the right thing because not enough other people stepped up when they should have. So, I'm still a jerk, but for all the right reasons, and other people should have stood up and spoken out to do the right thing. I don't understand her family. Do they know about the background checks, the bruises, lies, the abuse, and control, etc.? Have you told them everything? How could they support this wedding? Either you are imagining or exaggerating how bad a controlling abuser this guy is, or her family doesn't care about her. They care, but they are also very hands-off. Dad almost didn't come to the wedding, Mom had to convince him, some brothers didn't come. The attitude is like some of the responders here. She's an adult. She gonna do what she does. None of my business, etc. Filing a report without cooperation will also cause so many issues. Consequences. Retaliation. Further isolation. There's a reason she and I have been so tight. I was the person she ran to for help getting out of her first abusive and controlling relationship many years ago, in which she swore never again. Reminded her that this guy is an older version and far more dangerous. But the, he loves me, etc., script came on. When someone is already programmed to put up with this behavior, and doesn't want to be alone, they set themselves up to fall back into old patterns. They don't want to see it and will willingly tell themselves that they can change them. In a post like this, there's never enough to tell the whole story and all the threads that weave it. People are moaning about your execution of this plan, but the truth is, there's no easy, or effective, or nice way of telling a friend they're in danger from someone they love. But we should at least try. Kudos to you for trying to protect your friend. Thanks. And I'm not the only one who tried. Not the only one who ran a background check, etc. I talked to the family, was told, he could be worse, physical abuse wasn't a real concern, instead, her being the fourth wife and taking the family's last name was more eyebrow-raising. Another attitude was she makes the bed, she's gotta lay in it. God forbid someone speaks up. Others tried and were blackmailed into silence. Think about that. If someone could destroy your family, ruin you, harm your kids, how many would take that risk to take a stand? Not many. I was the one person who is transparent and has nothing he could hold over my head. Anything in my life I've done I own it, so he had no power over me, except for me trying to protect her. And again, if he would attack me physically in public, all the times he laid hands on me, grabbing me, who did not have a relationship with him, and he is a big tall guy, how intimidating is that to a lot of people? Remember, he is a manipulator first. Level expert. The key to any narcissistic is the charm, persuasion, and lies. Fourth marriage now, not his first rodeo. Deep sigh.